to whom I yield now, Ms. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Mr. Roscom for his leadership in spearheading this discussion on the dangers of last month's interim nuclear agreement deal with Iran. As we've had more time to dissect this deal, it is becoming clearer and clearer that despite Secretary Kerry's claim that no deal is better than a bad deal, we've been had. In exchange for the one thing that Iran so desperately needs, sanctions relief to jumpstart its flailing economy, the administration received nothing more than window dressing to stop Iran's nuclear program. This interim deal is the unraveling of the sanctions policy that was so painstakingly crafted over the past 10 years, and it was aimed at bringing Iran's nuclear program to an end. We've already seen other nations eager to get back into the Iranian market, and it will now be nearly impossible to stop the cash infusion into the Iranian regime. How can we stop this? This deal is contrary to U.S. sanctions law. It is contrary to UN Security Council resolutions that explicitly prohibit Iran from being able to enrich its own uranium. By accepting this deal, the administration has acquiesced to Iran's illegitimate claim to a right to enrich uranium, and it has done nothing to dismantle the nuclear infrastructure of Iran. Any temporary pause in Iran's progress can now be easily started right up again, with no real detriment to Tehran's march toward nuclear weapons capability. The administration has struck a deal with an Iranian regime that is one of the world's biggest supporters of terrorism and is a U.S. designated state sponsor of terrorism. It has offered sanctioned relief to the very same man who only 10 years ago, while serving as the chief nuclear negotiator of Iran to the West, boasted, Mr. Speaker, of using deception to buy time for Iran's nuclear program to progress. Yet the administration has fallen for what I called Rouhani's ruse. We have already seen Iran announce that it will continue construction on its plutonium plant at ARAK, with some experts believing that Iran will exploit a possible loophole in the agreement to allow it to build important components of this heavy water reactor off-site. And we continue to see Iran make advances on other nuclear weapons programs not addressed in the interim agreement, such as the development of ballistic missile technology needed to launch a nuclear payload over long distances. Mr. Speaker, not only is this interim deal dangerous for the precedent that it sets, that rogue regimes will get rewarded at the expense of our friends and allies who do play by the rules, but the deal is also dangerous because it weakens our credibility and harms our relations with other countries. This sends a terrible message to other countries in the region that have long feared Iran becoming nuclear, but have refrained from seeking their own nuclear program because the United States had promised that we would not allow Iran to enrich uranium or complete its heavy water reactor. This deal will create a loss of trust from other regional allies such as Saudi Arabia and others who now see a double standard from the United States. Our closest friend and ally, the democratic Jewish state of Israel, continues to feel an existential threat from Iran. President Obama has weakened the trust and the credibility of the United States, and in exchange has strengthened the legitimacy of the illegitimate Iranian regime. It is a double whammy. We lose stature while elevating a dangerous regime. And all for what? Our ability to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran and an all-out arms race in the Middle East. It's not going to happen. We're going to see a nuclear-armed Iran. We're going to see an all-out arms race in the Middle East. And we tarnished our relationship with our trusted allies. I remain committed, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Roscom, that ensuring that Iran never becomes a nuclear-capable country will happen. I urge my colleagues in the Senate to take up the sanctions legislation that we in the House overwhelmingly passed earlier this year. Mr. Speaker, Iran has no right whatsoever to enrichment. There can be no ambiguity here. The United States must not accept any new deal with Iran that does not end Iran's enrichment program completely and does not completely dismantle the nuclear infrastructure of this dangerous regime. I thank Mr. Roscom for this time. I thank him for his leadership, and we will continue the fight.
I thank the